start again.
Old-timey.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a gap in our old-time music output when Mark Wilson became less active, and a lot of people in the old-time community thought that we had just lost interest in old-time music, but it was really just not having someone who was knowledgeable and interested to go out into the field and do it. And I think the same's true with lots of other forms of music. It's not that it's not necessarily our bag, but it might have just been an area where we didn't feel we knew enough. And Cajun music's pretty far away from here, especially if you're driving. We never flew during those days. And, so it meant probably 3 days of driving each way just to get down there. And then there was the language and the cultural barriers and, whatever. So I don't think it was out in left field at all for us.
Oh, it still became something that Rounder's done a fair amount of.
Yeah.
I think,
I think we're probably the leading Cajun label.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
But so you went down there specifically to record DL, and that was the function there. When did you get to know Dewey Balfa and the brothers?
I'm not quite sure. I know that when I became friendliest with Dewey was through Hazel, because Hazel had toured with him a number of times, and when we went down there, we stayed at Dewey's house. Actually, we stayed at DL's house as well, but we have stayed at Dewey's, and I remember one time they did a great big crawfish boil, and we got to know him quite well over the years.
Dewey Balfa?
Yeah. Hazel was always very close to Rodney, but I think he, was killed early on, and so we never got to know them all that well. Did go over and see the Balfas a couple times, one in a regular sort of dance hall scene, and one at one of the Saturday morning shows.
You said you did get to know him fairly well?
Yeah. And I'd see him almost every year at the Cajun Festival. We talked, for hours and hours. We talked toward the end. We were talking about, his wanting to collect his papers and music, and we talked about the tribute record to the Balfas that I spoke to you about the other day, and we talked about the idea of will the circle be unbroken of Cajun, and we talked about so many things.
Did he talk to you about his his desires for the culture and the role that had kind of come to him post Rinsler and after Newport? Did he talk to you about his feelings about that, about his own role as an ambassador and what he hoped to do?
No, I don't think. I don't think he spoke about that as much as he lived it.
Okay.
It was just, I don't know if there was a real game plan as much as just he exuded a love for the culture and the music, and that. And it'd be interesting to speak to Christine and other people who were close to him, but I don't think it was a game plan as much as just to do it wherever he was, and I'm sure you've heard he just had his heart on his sleeve all the time, and he just spoke about what he was feeling, and he would cry at the drop of a hat. He would cry whenever he saw Hazel. He would cry both because he loved her, but also because she and Rodney were very close, and that whenever he saw her, he would think of Rodney, and he would just well up. And a lot of times, and when he was singing his songs, he would just cry right in the middle. Tears would come in because he was such a heartfelt person.
How did you end up licensing the French album that was made, the album made in France?
I think you'd have to check with Bill on that. I think we might have even seen it in the stores and contacted the company. I don't remember. I do remember having lengthy discussions with Dewey because he was upset that he was never getting royalties on those. We were paying them to France, to the company that we licensed it from, and apparently he wasn't
right?
getting. Yeah. Cezanne, I remember what it was, and he wasn't getting any. And in his later years, we switched around and paid him directly.
Okay. How did you hook up with Beausoleil and Michael? How did that relationship came about? You probably put out more of their albums than anybody.
No.
No?
No. Orhuli put out many more.
Pardon me?
Orhuli put out many more.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Rhino's now put out more.
I know Rhino's. Really?
Yeah.
How did your relationship begin? You did put out a bunch of them, at least.
Yeah. We did 3 records, and we did a Michael solo and then the children's record. It was from discussions that I had with him, and I think it probably followed R.C. and Koto at the National Folk Festival again, and just being blown away. And we had the record concession, and the following year, the first year, we approached them, and they were in that major label mode. They were going to wait and try to get a major label, which of course never happened. And the next year, people were coming up to us at the record concession and saying, do you have anything yet by Koto? And it was amazing. It wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was like 30 or 40 people. Just incredible that someone could remember a band from the previous year. And later on, when I was speaking to Michael, I started talking about the idea of Beausoleil doing something that was a little bit closer to Koto, that seemed to have really struck a chord with a large number of people. And we started 2 things sort of simultaneously there, thinking about Beausoleil doing something that would be a little bit rockier, and also to try to find some missing Koto tapes. Mm-hmm. And we finally agreed to do a record, a very, very low budget, I remember, but it was probably still more than Orhuli was paying.
This is the Bayou Boogie record, the first?
Yeah.
First Beausoleil?
Yeah. And that did extremely well, and we did well by him for the 3 records we were working with him.
Back to Menard a bit on his structure. How did the Cajun Saturday Night record come about, the one that Jerry Douglas produced?
That was something that Deal wanted to do, and he'd if you ever see him, he'll talk about Hank Williams. He'll,
okay.
And his, some of his guitar style comes from there, but certainly his singing style, and he just wanted to do that, and so we helped arrange it.
Yeah, you guys didn't. You kind of financed it and put it out, but you didn't. Did you have anything to do with the sessions or anything?
Oh yeah, I was down for the whole sessions. Yeah.
How did you hook up with Nick Spitzer on that? That was what I can identify. It's your first Zydeco stuff. Was really his doctoral dissertation work in part.
I don't remember. I'm almost sure that we would have met him at the Smithsonian Folklife Festivals because we spent a lot of time there. And I don't remember if that was pre or post Oak to Clark. I think it's likely that we met at the Smithsonian and he approached us about that.
It's pre Oak to Clark.
Well, pre Oak to Clark, but
In terms of releases, I don't know.
release. But I told you the story on the Oak to Clark.
Yeah.
No. Well, on I think it was a subsequent trip to Louisiana. It would have been because it was the trip with Dick and Ellen Spotswood, and we were quite friendly with Dewey by then. And while Dick and Ellen went somewhere, I think checking out Zydeco or pre-Zydeco or something like that, and Dewey and I went over to Mr. Okta's house, and with the Reeboks and the things, and it was Mr. Okta and Bessel Duhan and Hector Lopez, I think. I'm not quite sure on that. And Dewey acted as the A&R person, and I was the engineer, or Dewey did the communications. I would say things like, ask him what's the oldest song he knows. And we had this incredible stuff. We asked about Paul Jones's. We asked about all these old dances that people used to do in the Cajun community. And Mr. Okta would come up with, we had this great material, and we brought it back and gave it to Nick to edit. And Nick had we'd just about done and had made all the selections and was listening back to it on his tape recorder, left it there, I guess, overnight, and his house got broken into and the tape recorder stolen. And with it, the master tapes of the best songs. And so the Oak to Clark record that came out had a couple of the things that weren't considered good enough to make the record, and some live stuff that he did. And it was a couple years later. So when we did that trip and when we spent that time with Dewey, and it was a few years prior to that.
You raised an interesting question that you asked him in terms of like what's the oldest song you know.
Yeah.
You were recording somebody who's been around a while and has played within a tradition. What types of things would you try and hear for yourself and possibly get on record? What kind of questions would you ask? And was this a commonality with you, sort of?
It really depended. I mean, we were sort of, none of us are trained ethnos,
right?
Or folklorists, but we were.
Well, I don't think that's a trained question. It's a common sense question. What's the oldest thing you know?
Yeah.
So that's what
No, but it's just, we started out, I doubt if it's in here, but when we started out, we spent hours and hours in the store in Cambridge called Briggs & Briggs reading liner notes. We were voracious readers on the music. We wrote some, I don't know if Bill mentioned this or not, but we wrote, after visiting Orville Reed, we wrote a piece for, I think it was the JEMF Quarterly on Blind Alfred Reed. We were just sucking it in, anything that we could read. And when we did records, we were committed. I mean, even on the Spark Out the Line, we always had liner notes way before most of the other companies. You take a look at Rebel and County, most of them had virtually no liner notes. And same thing. We were much more concerned about album covers and graphics and I think sound quality as we got to the point where we felt we could afford to. We were just we just grew up, we were still in school or just out of school and still had that, that curiosity, and we were still trying to, at the same time we were trying to educate others, we were educating ourselves.
Right.
And So we wanted to know this stuff. I mean, you see a guy, Oakta was probably, 75 at the time. And, what were this? And what was, I was thinking of doing a whole album, as we're listening to this, of different Cajun dances, going back over the years, not just two steps and waltzes, but we did one steps, we did Paul Jones's, we did, I don't remember, there's some that, that I can't remember now. But that was the sad story of the Oakta Clark record. And if you listen to a couple of things we have on the compilations, they were extremely powerful. And those were the leftovers. And the live record never, the thing that Nick did just didn't come close. And it's the fish that got away. Probably would have sold, 2,000 records anyway, but that was very hurtful.
Right. Would you do the same type of things with Menard or Dewey Balth and say, what's, I guess, was this sort of a common thing you try to find around Almeda Riddle? Sing some of the older songs, what did your family sing? Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, Mark would do that, and he does with the fiddle tunes, too. Yeah. It's not just what they play best, but, what's their contribution. Original songs that other people don't know, variations. I mean, I do that a fair amount. I would, there'd be a song like Lonesome Road Blues that's very much in the bluegrass repertoire. But I got a version, I think it was from Minnie, Maddie, and Martha Carson and her two sisters, that had this little chorus, just said, blues, blues, Lonesome Road Blues, Lord, I got those Lonesome Road Blues. And it really added something to the song, and I'm always looking for that, or different verses. We did, So I used to spend quite a bit of time going to the library for a while. When Jeff Titan was there, they had a folklore course, and they sort of beefed up the library. And I'd go and take out all these books and find these, go through the song books and find songs that were in the bluegrass repertoire or old-time repertoire, and find new verses, to make the song different. And add a verse. We recently did something with James King did Sweeter Than the Flowers, and I found a verse that had not been used and that I know, that had not been on the Stanleys or any other recordings, and added that. I love doing that kind of thing.
You just taught it to him, or
yeah.
He did it.
Yeah.
Would you ever do that with some of the old timers who were recording, who had recorded long ago in the past, who to you were
no
more icons?
No, we didn't do the Lomax stuff.
Right.
Yeah. You've read those stories. They've been coming down and
kind of coming at
Yeah.
Did you kind of feed repertoire down Almeda Riddle, for example?
No, not at all.
How about with DL, who's maybe kind of a cross between? I don't know that I see him as a modern musician, although I guess he.
I might have. I'm trying to think. I might have brought in Letters Have No Arms. I think he did that. I do that a lot in bluegrass. I think that's a major, in terms of bluegrass, I think that, bringing in songs to the repertoire and are bringing women into bluegrass are probably our two major, aside from, quality and covers and notes and those things. But I think those are our two major contributions. And probably adding marketing, which is, was not a big thing with Rebel or County.
When you say bringing songs to the repertoire, you mean good songs that were not normally done as bluegrass tunes?
Well, both. Sometimes finding, I think that the first thing that I did of significance was bringing Del McCoury High on a Mountain, which was written by Ola Belle Reed. Okay. And we heard her do that at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival in 70 or 71, and I mentioned it to Del, and he knew Ola Belle, and he went over and ended up getting, I think, 3 songs from from her, and High on a Mountain became like his, practically theme song.
Have not been done as a bluegrass tune.
No. And that was start. Then there were a few other things on Dell's record that we brought in. One was in a bluegrass song that had then been done by the New Law City Ramblers, and that's where we heard it, and then we brought it back to bluegrass.
Do you know what that was? So
like Lonesome Hobo.
They did it as an old-timey tune?
Yeah, but Tracy sang it, so it was just, it was somewhere in between there.
Right. Any other examples you can think of? Those are good vignettes.
In terms of what? I mean, I could go on there. It would be interesting. I think I probably brought into the bluegrass repertoire, I'd say, probably 200, 300 songs.
Well, how about 3 more? What's
Well, give me an example of what you'd like. I mean, it ranges from songs from the 60s folk revival. I just, James King did Pack Up Your Sorrows on the last record, to songs from Nashville songwriters, to 50s Nashville songs, to singer-songwriters like David Olney. It's a real broad. Hazel and I used to go visit this 78 collector who lived a little bit west of D.C., and we'd get all kinds of things, and sometimes from together. Her version of Olden in the Way came from like 5 different versions, and we, picked, the ones that we liked and put them together. Play Us a Waltz, which Hazel did, I heard on Prairie Home Companion, done in a totally different way. Bed by the Window, I had gotten from Malico Publishing in Nashville. And
how'd you find the tune?
It was a very folky tune that this guy played for me, and
who recorded it?
Well, James King eventually recorded
No, I mean,
it.
who recorded it on Malico?
Oh, it wasn't on Malico. It was their publishing company.
I see. Okay.
And it was this guy who apparently writes these pop, things for pop country, and this woman who came up with the idea, and this incredible storyline, and everybody I played it for was really moved, but no one really paid any attention. And then like a year after I played it for James, he called me up one day and said, "I think I got it." And they changed the tune around just a little bit, and it was #1 for, 6 months this year. And I'd had it for 10 years, and just kept pitching it to people.
What's the name of the tune?
Bed by the Window. You don't know this?
No.
It's a story of two old men in a nursing home for the aged, and their minds are still there, but their bodies have given way. And they have the 2 beds, and one guy's by the window, and the other guy's across the room. And the guy by the window each day, looks out and tells his roommate what's going on, about the kids playing in the street, and the guy sweeping up, and all of this. And then he goes on for another verse, and this has been going on for, I guess, a couple of years. And then one day, the guy across the room wakes up, and the other bed is vacant, and old Bill has died. And so they move the other guy across the room, and for the first time after 3 years, he looks out the window, and he looks outside, and he sees a brick wall. And they bring in somebody else to take over his bed. And every morning he tells them about the kids playing outside and the guy sweeping up the street and the cars going by.
It's a great story.
Yeah, it's incredible. And no one had wanted to do that. And I'd had it for 10 years, and I just kept believing in it, that I somehow feel that if something touches me, that it's going to touch some other people. Yeah, there might not be that many softies out there, but it'll have. But that's one that's recent. That's been the top song. Right now, the top album is by Longview, and the song is High Lonesome, which will probably be #1 next month. And it's a song I heard by the Woodies, and I guess it had been written by Gretchen Peters and had been done by Randy Travis, but I never heard that. But I heard the Woodies do it, and when I heard them do it, Gretchen came up and sang a high third, and I said, wow, it'd be great bluegrass, and I brought it to Longview. And, it'll be #1. So they just, it just hear songs in different places and, make lists and send them out. And
those are great stories. Those are great stories. Do you feel you've played a role in anything that's become kind of a staple bluegrass repertoire of known far and wide and played by different bands, maybe different young bands that haven't worked up enough material on their own? And I'm not talking per se about recent #1s or things that have been hits. I'm talking about things that an up-and-coming bluegrass band might say, let's learn this tune.
Yeah. If you go to the parking lot, I mean, I can spend, a couple hours in the parking lot at a festival and hear, 10 or 15 things that I've brought in.
What do you think? What would those be?
Oh, anything from high on a mountain to, although not too many people can get up there. It's a little bit rare. I'm Lonesome Tonight. Actually, that was just off a record, but Crazy Heart, which is on the new James King, and then the Lonesome River Band cut it right after that, and that's become a new staple. And what's interesting is the things that you consider staples are very different now. There are a lot of things that you hear in the parking lots are Longview tunes, Lonesome River Band. You don't hear quite as much, Flat and Scruggs and Samleys. It depends who you're hanging around with, but there's a lot of contemporary things. I heard Rose of My Heart that Hugh Moffat wrote, and I got the Whitsteins that, and they did a beautiful job, and now third time out's doing it.
I was listening to some of those records just because you told me how much you loved them.
Yeah.
And, so I did that before I came back here. And, they're just beautiful records.
Yeah.
They're just incredibly beautiful records.
Yeah. And, I was thinking, I was telling somebody years ago when Hazel and I went down to Cuba, that right before Raul Castro spoke to us, they had this Cuban mandolin guitar duet performing for those of us who were waiting to be spoken to, and that they have government support, and if there was any justice, and this the Whitsteins would be national treasures, and and would be brought to perform here, there, wherever, and instead they're they get together and probably sing together for fun. And
you couldn't sell their records at all?
No.
You going to do any more, or is it just impossible?
I'd love to. One of them's living in Louisiana, one in Nashville, and who knows? Yeah.
Would Rounder have a problem with it? Just say, we've got to put it. I don't mean Ken. I mean.
Yeah. It depends if they could. A couple of the records were actually pretty expensive, and I think I'd run into trouble there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Talk about how you help with the repertoire. That now
a lot of the Whitstein stuff. I mean, if you look at, you probably don't go that far. Looks like you only have the first little while, but as an example, Rose of My Heart I brought in, Weary Days I brought in, Bridge Over Troubled Waters was mine, I think Smoky Mountain Memories, that would have come from Yeah, Bridge Over Troubled Water is like a few of the things just amazing. Where I sent them down a tune which I thought might work, and then like the next week I got this totally convoluted thing. I mean, it was so far above my expectations that have you heard that?
No, not on this record.
Oh, I mean, it's just you want to turn that off for a second? I mean, you got to hear this.
Okay. That was good stuff, by the way. Not just the music. I mean, the stuff you were telling me was better than it was off plan and better that way.
Yeah.
It was good. Have you ever gotten flack for anything like that? When you refer to something specifically, and you can comment on the incident, you probably read about it, but I don't know. It was kind of benign as I read it. But Dirty Linen had a feature on the Freight Hoppers, which is a different kind of group, I think, from these guys. But it was about the making of their last release, and without much elaboration at all, they quoted one of the band members in a kind of grumbling way, saying that at the sessions you were pushing them to make the record more radio ready, and that was the phrase that the guy used. And his point, again, there was very little elaboration. If you look at the article, his point was he wasn't interested in radio ready per se. Ken Irwin was interested in radio ready, and it kind of got in the way, and the record got made. Do you have any remembrance?
No,
of that
and
did you know it was?
No, it sounds ludicrous because the Freights are never going to get much radio.
I didn't know where the radio ready sound would come from either.
No.
Who's going to play them? But
no, that sounds very much off the wall. I've said things like, let's do, and this is with them, this is with somebody else, where, let's do another take and clean. So, well, that's good enough for selling for the people at the table.
The artist would say this?
Yeah. It's someone who'd been on the Opry for, close to 30 years. And
have you ever met resistance with tunes, say? Would people not want to do a Bridge Over Troubled Water or unplugging?
Oh, of course, and that's fine. I'd probably send down for the Wittsteins, I'd probably send 30 or 40 ideas, and they might pick 4 or 5. And that's life.
Yeah.
And if I figure if they pick 4 or 5, maybe that's 4 or 5 better songs than they would have picked out. In some cases, so they've come up with some absolutely gorgeous things and things I'd never thought of. And I like it when I get into a situation like that. And there have been a few. I think Hazel and James King and Bill Grant and Delia Bell, the Wittsteins, Joe Val towards the end. People that I really felt really listened when I sent things out. Del McCurry. If you listen to the albums that we did versus, the ones that we didn't, the material was just so far superior that...
This is largely you just making suggestions.
Yeah.
Songs,
And sometimes they didn't click, like David Olney's Queen Anne's Lace is something that I played with Del. There were about 10 songs that we played and we listened to, and he didn't respond. And I went back and said, Del, did you listen to the words of that song? And he said, yeah, I think so. I said, well, this is the story. And I told him the story, and he got up from the lunch table and went back in and played it and said, I think I can do something with that. And it's a great song for him.
Do you ever have people who are real idiosyncratic and want to do it their way?
Loads of them.
Okay.
And there are some. I mean, Allison, at this point, we don't hear anything until they're mixed, basically. I got to hear a couple of rough mixes this time, but that's a real stretch. And there's some other people too, and in some cases, I think, it might be for the betterment of the project. I don't know every music and I don't know every artist, and you can't have the same kind of relationship. All people are different, and songs are. I mean, I've sent 30, 40 songs to some artists and not have them pick out anything, and do things which I thought were far inferior. And that's we all hear things differently, and we all have different tastes. And even if they had done all the songs that I picked, it might not have been right, or they might not have gotten into them. I mean, the artist still has to feel it and hear it and be able to make it their own, so that they're for me, a lot of music is communication, and if they're not feeling it, then how are they going to communicate it? How is anybody else going to feel it? So they have to hear it and be able to respond somehow in their in their heart, and then be able to put that out to really make it work.
I think it was Marion used the phrase with me. It wasn't yesterday. Suburban bluegrass.
Mm-hmm.
I have an intuitive sense of what that means. I think of Kmart's and rollers in your hair or something, but
yeah.
I'm trying to get my hand. Does that phrase mean anything to you when you hear it? Do you know what someone's talking about?
I would have one thought of it. It's not a term that I would use.
Uh-huh. But it's
pass.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like you recognize what people might mean from it.
Well, there was. I mean, it's hard to tell.
Which is different from it not being a term you'd use, but recognizing what people mean by a term that you dislike or you consider.
No, it's. I mean, I've heard one that I like much better is Naugahyde bluegrass.
Uh-huh. What's that mean to you?
Classic.
Okay.
Like there's no feeling, and artificial. Suburban could be in terms of lyrics, but I don't think she meant it that way. I think it's probably the lack of soul. And soul is a very difficult term, and I've seen it used on the bluegrass list, and some people list people as being soulful who I think are so incredibly white bread that BREAD that probably both white bread that there's no feeling whatsoever, and it's there's just a lot of terms like that sometimes you think you're communicating with.
I actually think she meant it as the antithesis of the opposite
soul?
of the opposite of a kind of hip chic bluegrass, which has some cachet, but was kind of a throwback to the '50s bluegrass, which was good stuff. But let's getting away from that.
It doesn't mean anything to me. Yeah,
this is not working or going anywhere.
No, I would have thought it would have been rebel bluegrass of the 1970s when they were doing all the Washington area stuff.
When you got turned down to the Johnson Mountain Boys, what did you think of what they were doing and how it fit into what else was going on?
You got the story on how we got introduced?
I believe I do. Yeah.
The Walt Saunders and Ruby Saunders.
Right. I don't think it's on tape, or you?
Yeah. Well, Walt Saunders had been a friend of ours from record number 3. He reviewed Joe Val, our first bluegrass record, Bluegrass Unlimited, and we wrote back to him and asked him if we mentioned Jerry and Sky, and we wrote back to him, and he said, next time you come visit. And Mary and I spent many a night there with his wife Ruby, and we became friends, and there were a number of projects that Walt had suggested. Johnny Wisnant, who had been a very, very early three-finger style picker. There's some tapes that are thought to precede Scruggs on three-finger style. And the Bailey brothers, who I love dearly. Love daily. And And so he contacted us about this group, the Johnson Mountain Boys, and they invited us, Hazel and I, over for dinner one night, and we went over and they played us some tapes and sounded pretty good, and they said that they were playing that Sunday. And then, after dinner, we stayed around for a while and then left. And as we were leaving, shook hands with Walt and gave Ruby a hug, and she wouldn't let go. And she said, "You are coming to see them on Sunday, aren't you?"
Now, did they set this up for you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, they had a regular gig.
Okay.
They had a regular gig.
Not done for the Rounders.
No.
Okay.
No, this was Susie's. Susie's was in the middle of nowhere. We thought we were lost totally, and then we finally came upon it. And
was it a Chinese restaurant or?
No, Susie's is a hillbilly bar where about a third of the women still had rollers in their hair, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon when they came to the gig and dancing, and I mean it was pretty hardcore. So no, it was the real thing, and the place where you'd probably. Where I'd really want to see that instead of on a concert stage.
Right. Is that a scene that exists? This was 1979, 1980?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did a lot of that exist, to your knowledge? A lot of the real thing?
I'm sure there was, but probably, I think the Dayton scene probably still exists. I think in Missouri it still does.
Right.
It really depends where you are, I think.
Did you ever feel there's a lot out there like that you're missing? Or do you feel your tentacles are broad enough?
Oh, absolutely. Loads that were missing.
Okay.
I didn't tell you this Cajun thing on tape, but it occurred to me, and it's somewhat analogous. We, Hazel and I were down in Louisiana. We were following up a tip. There was supposedly some guy who was like this young Hank Williams, and we went to this little club in Plaquemine, Louisiana, about halfway, I think, between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. I'm thinking it's around there.
Okay.
And music started, and there was this, country band. They were okay, but not great. But the thing was that if the audience liked the song, they would stay on the dance floor, and the band would repeat it. And if they didn't like it that much, they'd sit down. I'd never seen anything like that.
The band would play a different song.
The band would play a different song. After the repeat,
yeah.
They'd go and sit down and have their their drink and talk, and the band would play another song.
Did you pull any recordings out of that?
No. Be a great place to record, to practice before recording. Because we'll find out which of the songs they like, and we'll also have time to rehearse it.
Did you ever give any thought to how you go out and find other Johnson Mountain Boys or other, other things that you are missing? Since you don't have formal A&R, so to speak, you probably don't have the money to have formal A&R.
People tentacles everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, we get a little bit of, some from DJs, some from reviewers, some from friends. I ask, but. It's various. Go to IBMA, go to some festivals. I don't go to enough festivals, especially, now that I'm married. We don't, do quite the traveling that we did.
Right. And you're on the Bluegrass Ale, or pick up things from there, or hear people. Do you just listen?
No, the best one that I did, and it's been a little while now, but I was reading, and this is when there was less garbage on the list. But I was reading somebody talking about a festival they'd just gone to, and then the last paragraph of 12-paragraph note or something, it said that they saw Claire Lynch, and she had a record coming out in February, but she didn't know what label. And I immediately got on the line. I contacted her agent. He said, "No, this, something happened with her label." And I called her, and after having almost signed her 10 years previously, we finally got to work with her, and she's been a dear.
You have to.
Well, I think the meeting's here, so
okay.
I wouldn't mind catching up with my email for a few minutes if you have something else.
That's all right.
Yeah.